President Cyril Ramaphosa is in Germany for meetings with Chancellor Angela Merkel and to attend the G20 Compact with Africa Investment Summit. The summit was initiated under Germany's 2017 presidency of the G20 to promote private investment into the African continent. 12 African countries have joined the initiative so far. The summit is chaired by South Africa and Germany. One of the matters that will come under discussion is vaccine production in Africa. Let's discuss this further now. We're joined by the lecturer at the Schools of Economics and Finance at Wits University, Dr. Lumkile Mondi. Dr. Mondi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa says he wants to push for more investment in Africa. Do you think he will succeed after what South Africa has been through, especially since the latest unrest?
Good afternoon to you, Natia, and your listeners. The president has really pushed very hard around investment in South Africa by appointing the 4 lions that you all know, that include Mcebisi Jonas, as well as Phumzile Langeni, Trevor Manuel, as well as Jaco Mari, the former Standard Bank executive. So that drive has not yielded a huge multipliers in terms of investment in South Africa because of the policy uncertainty that continue to bedevil South Africa, but more particularly the lack of economic policy from the ANC-run government that can deal with inclusivity and redress of the ills of the past, where many South Africans find themselves in far worse conditions than they've been in many, many years. So therefore, this is really an attempt by the president to extend that attempt of mobilizing international resources to South Africa and the rest of the continent on the back of him when he was the chair of the African Union of delivering an integrated continent through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Whether he'll succeed remains to be seen, because there are conditionalities that are going to be put on the table, particularly relating to the climate investment that is pertaining across the African continent, relating to COVID region and an increase in stability, particularly in Ethiopia, where we had thought that through Ethiopia and Rwanda, Africa had turned the corner, but suddenly we've seen Ethiopia going backward through the war within the Tigray region.
Now, Doctor, South Africa is sitting with an unemployment, crisis or time bomb, as some have called it. The country's economic outlook has been on a slippery slope, really, since, pre-COVID. Do you think the country has a long way to go before, we can see some investors?
South Africa has got a long way to go, particularly in view of the policy uncertainty I've mentioned. So I think many investors are looking at South Africa saying, we saw 2 days ago the revisions of economic growth, that the economy is much bigger than what we thought. However, this society is riddled with poverty and unemployment, particularly among the youth who remained marginalized and are not participating in the economy. And there is no economic plan on the table by the governing party of dealing with these challenges. So those remain huge issues for investors. But more important also, that policy decisions take so long to do. Remember, Unati, that we all knew about our energy insecurity, at least for the past 6 years, that a plan has to come to the fore. It is moving, but at a very, very slow pace. The breaking down of Eskom has been done on paper, but we don't yet have an independent institution that can deal with the transmission and buying and selling of our energy from independent power producers. So until South Africa delivers in these things, I think many investors are going to come and listen what the president says, as well as Minister Pandor, but we'll wait and see until there's a clear direction as to where South Africa is going.
And I hear you, Doctor, around the policy reform. Now, how much of the political turmoil that we are seeing in the country, and as well as the corruption, is going to be a deterrent for investors?
So investors don't get deterred so much by corruption as long as they make money. We've seen in many countries, including China, work that's been done by Yuan Ang from the University of Michigan indicates to us the embeddedness of corruption within the Chinese system. The difference between South Africa and China being that the corruption is a growth-enhancing corruption. In South Africa, is the other way around. It's destroying jobs, destroying opportunity, destroying infrastructure. So that, I think, for South Africa is a big question mark. However, as South African civil society and academics, we should look at corruption with very, very clear thought about whether does it enhance growth or does it destroy growth. In this case, I think South Africa, we've seen growth destructive corruption, which for investors is a problem. But as I've said to you, that investors generally don't use corruption as a measure of not investing. As long as they make money, they go to bed with corrupt regimes, as they've done with China, and turn a blind eye towards corruption. So it is early for us to say whether investors might be deterred by the experience of South Africa. I think one of the positive things that South Africa has done is the introduction of the Zondo Commission, which has just folded and is working on a report to tell us what needs to be done. So that, I think, for investors does send a positive signal. But at least we must never think that a corrupt regime won't be open for business. Usually business, as long as it makes money, it will go into that corrupt regime.
Now, Dr. Mondi, we know that the West came under fire and being accused of vaccine apartheid, and really which was what was hampering and debilitating the African continent in terms of its, recovery as it speaks to the economy of the continent. Now, one of the matters that will come under discussion during the summit is vaccine production in Africa. What's your thinking around that, and how will these African countries, particularly that are there, fare as it comes to this very topic that will be seen as somewhat, just taking ownership back into the continent?
So, we've seen that in South Africa through Aspen, that already we are producing vaccines. Unfortunately, most of the vaccine are going to the clients of J&J and others that we are manufacturing for. So the capability is there. I think here in South Africa, we have capability of production. So is countries like Kenya as well as Rwanda. The challenge, I think, for us is really investing on R&D to develop our own vaccines as Africans. And that's the area where government can play a much bigger role through its national system of innovation. And as we've seen with South Africa in the past 26 years, the destruction of capabilities by the ANC government has been enormous, because remember that South Africa used to lead in vaccine production across many areas, from animal, even research around food. South Africa was far ahead around production of those scientific capabilities, which has lost over many years. So I think the agreement that we can produce is this one step forward, but a bigger step that's required by African governments is invest on knowledge, invest on learning, invest on capability, so that we are much more prepared through our own research and development by making sure that our national system of innovation is intact, is well supported by business, by the state and broader society, including indigenous knowledge, because we know that in many Africans, there exists in that indigenous knowledge that dealt with disease and various challenges that were faced by older generations in our African history.
Dr. Mondi, perhaps as we wrap, this conversation, we've been seeing as South Africans, a lot of financial aid, as it were, coming into the country with the likes of the IMF, even recently seeing some sort of injection coming from that front. How much of these financial assistance are helping this country in the short term?
unfortunately, in the short term, we saw some of the earlier drawdowns that we did went to some people's pockets. Unfortunately, we've seen the consequence of that. In Gauteng, we just lost a hardworking CFO who was shot down in daylight by thugs at home because she was doing good work for South Africans. Not only for the public sector, but for us who are tax-paying South Africans. So a lot of the money that's come from the IMF has not been used effectively. And we want to make sure and ensure that we continue monitoring how that money is being used by our government. And unfortunately, the Ramaphosa regime has not done better by the Zuma regime around stopping corruption. So it's a continuation of stealing money, not to put on to the people and infrastructure, but it's going to many of the ANC-linked cronies in government. And fortunately, the SIU is doing a good job, but want to see more consequences because the consequences seem not to be coming true. As a result, corruption is still being incentivized, coming through government, and money that's being borrowed, that's not filtering through to where it's supposed to be, as the PPE case study has shown in Gauteng and other provinces.
Dr. Mondi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
It is a pleasure. Thanks and good evening.
Dr. Lumkile Mondi from the School of Economics and Finance at Wits University, speaking to us there about the G20 summit.